So that's interesting, because I know that National Australia Bank talk very much about having the customer at the centre of everything you do.
Yes.
And focusing on the customer. And at the same time, we're talking about what does the technology enable us to do. And then we talk about the strategy in terms of where do we want to go and be able to really move the banks. And how do you manage those three kind of components dynamically? Focusing on the customer, at the same time looking at where the customer can take us, and what is our strategy going forward in kind of an iteration of that. How have your banks thought about those kinds of debates and dynamics?
Well, look, for us, it's putting the customer at the heart of everything we do. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's no question that in this environment and previously, it's about making the customer the North Star. So if we make sure that when we're looking forward to the technology we're going to use, we always have the customer, in the front of our minds about what we're doing now, whether that's using robots to improve the customer experience, or getting a more productive environment so the customer gets access to better products and services. It's and it actually makes it, for me, it makes it easier, because when you're doing your business case, yes, there's a financial aspect, but if you look at it with a customer lens, that can often turn the way which robot you decide to put in first. For us, it's kind of a guiding light. Okay. For us, and we, in our group, we've tried to instill that culture, and certainly that's the culture in the organisation.
Well, I would be less than truthful if I told you that the bank that I formerly worked at was following a North Star principle. When we started this, it was all because we needed to cut a massive amount of cost out of the organization. And I had drunk the Kool-Aid and bought the literature and had the banner and the tattoo on my head and thought I could get out like thousands and thousands of people in like a year. And soon found out that through a screeching halt to the brakes and bloodying my nose a few times that the bots don't work with unstructured data, right. And that was not going to happen. And no matter how fast I could build them, you could only automate so many, and you were only going to be automating a third of whatever we touched anyway. And then you ran into the other things, like you'd get processes where you were getting fingers and toenails and that kind of thing, so you weren't going to harvest, quote unquote, a lot of capacity out of a process to begin with, and so the process owners didn't have a lot of decision making to do. So you might be making something better by a tenth or a third of an FTE, and that wasn't really going to do any good for the organization. It took us probably until we matured up into about 1.5 to 2 years before we really started moving into the customer impacting processes, where we got people to understand that you could use these things for front-end processes. So we moved in the sales side of the organization. We did a lot of things in marketing and in our CFO organization for turning around reporting and things to the regulators as well as to our external customers. So it took us a while to get there, simply because we had to earn our stripes with our operational. And because of my reporting line was directly into the COO, and he was paying for all this, I had to gain that trust first. It worked, and it certainly does work, and you can do a lot with these tools, but it does absolutely have to do with making sure you understand when you start out in these endeavors, what are you being measured on? And money's not the only thing that you're going to get from these things. I mean, I've heard Greg speak, and he talks about productivity, hours back to the business, risk reduction, all those things. And it took us a while to convince people that those were good things as well. And finally we were able to show those things and actually be able to talk in very simple terms, which really hit home with people, which was getting it down to a dollar per hour cost. So we could show them what the processes cost per hour before and the processes cost per hour after, with Alex in the process. So it's these kinds of things, again, just understanding those things, and then also putting the customer impacting cycle times, like how long does it take something to get to a customer versus before. All those things are very, very important as well. So metricing is another long discussion. We could probably talk about all the challenges with picking the right measures and metrics when you're doing these things, because it's a very tricky discussion, and every single organization has different types of metrics they use. They pick the same measures. They want a financial measure, a productivity measure, a CSAT measure, those kind of things. But it's always the metrics they try to plug into those things that make it interesting.